Okay. I think we're live. And hello, everyone. Welcome to a new live session on our OllyGarden YouTube channel and on LinkedIn. Welcome, everybody. Today we have a special guest, Pavol. Maybe you want to introduce yourself, Pavol, and then we can dive into our conversation.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Nicolas. I'm very happy to be here and talk about the Agentic Workflow for Altel. I'm Pavol. I work for Red Hat. I'm based in Switzerland, and at Red Hat, I lead the OpenTelemetry team. We have our distribution of OpenTelemetry on OpenShift, and we as well maintain the operator. In the past, I was as well contributing to some of the instrumentation libraries, especially around Java. But yeah, have been in the observability space for a pretty long time.
Cool. Yeah, I'm very excited to have you here today because we've already been connecting since a few weeks now, because we both are also very interested in the capabilities when it comes to AI agents and MCP servers and agentic workflows in context of OpenTelemetry. And we've been collaborating already a little bit. And today the session will be simply about going more into depth there to show to other folks what we tried out, what's already there, which tooling there is, also about touching on a few points, what's happening in the community right now, and simply sharing our experiences in terms of AI agents and MCP servers in terms of OpenTelemetry. Before we start going into that, I first of all have a more general question to you, Pavol. What I like to ask a lot of different people, because it's very interesting to me to see what's happening in these crazy times where every week there is a new tool or there's news about HEI or a new game changer, whatever. And my first question would be, if you now think back, like your development workflow and how you write code compared to maybe 2 years ago, where those coding agents were not a thing like they are today. Did your workflow change? How significantly, and how is your overall feeling about those tools?
Yeah, in short, I think my workflow completely changed. Actually, when I look back at the last year, 2025, when it started in January, I was still like writing code myself. I was like going to Google, going to Stack Overflow, going to GitHub to research, different kind of code bases, and then writing my piece of code. And right now it's completely different. First of all, I use AI tools to help me to get started, to analyze the problem. And then maybe like in mid of 2025, I was still trying to myself to start and write something that I wanted to implement in the code base. But now I usually start completely with an AI tool to get started on working on some feature in the project. If it doesn't work, then I kind of reduce the scope and I give it a bit more specific instructions. And I think I had a great success with that, and I think I can do more, or I can implement features more quickly with this approach than before.
Yeah. For me, it's very similar experiences which I have. I even published a blog post about that on my personal blog, so I don't want to do any promotion for that. But essentially, it's pretty similar what you mentioned, that I use as AI kind of the tool to execute, and I feed it with the instructions what I want to do. So if I tackle new code bases, maybe first of all a summary or overview, how to get started, then I make myself familiar. Or when I actually implement something, two things which I think are really, really important is to break down the scope of a task as small as possible. So I always try to only let the AI agent do one particular thing and not front end and back end tasks at the same time, for example.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, which in my experience is very, very important, is that verification loop. So you say, okay, I want to introduce a new additional route in my HTTP server, but in order to have a successful implementation, you need to confirm that the status code is given, that the response structure is in that format and all those things. And only when those verifications are confirmed, only then it's completed. And when you do this, it works pretty good for me. So I think that's independently of OpenTelemetry something which is very important for everybody who's using coding agents. And if you're not doing that yet, it's a good recommendation to try it out.
Yeah, I would second that this verification is very important, and it's very important to kind of understand the problem that you are trying to solve in the code, because these agents can hallucinate as well, and they can try to persuade you that the approach is not even possible, and that's oftentimes not true. So what works the best is to understand the problem and then just give the good instructions and reduce the scope. Yeah.
Or what I also had sometimes, I was asking like, okay, hey, we want to add this feature to our code base. Let's plan the implementation and go ahead. And then suddenly it's coming up with a change of 500 files and 10 different new implementations. And then I'm like, couldn't we simply do it like this? And then you receive, oh yeah, you're absolutely right. Let me remove everything I've just added. So it's very important to give the right instructions. Otherwise, they will produce not the best results eventually. Do you have any favorite coding agent you like to use?
So at Red Hat, we are using Cloud Code. It works pretty well, but over the Christmas, I was working on my pet project, and I did it in anti-gravity from Google, and I really like that tool. I think it's my favorite IDE at the moment. There is this nice agent window where you see all your prompts in like chats, categorized based on the project. It's easy to follow what the agent is doing. It creates nice execution plan that is split into tasks. What is amazing is that you can comment on the plan as on a GitHub pull request. So on each line, you can give it like suggestions that you want to rework something, and then submit for review. And once you are happy with the plan, you can just execute and see what it does. It's pretty good. I worked on like a mobile app with some backend, and yeah, it was very, very quick execution. What was as well amazing to me, I have zero knowledge in mobile development, and I was not sure how I could like create nice usable UI that I would actually enjoy using. And I tried first time to use the tool called Figma, which is for UI designers. And Figma has as well AI integration, and you can like prompt it to create something. You can even copy designs to the Figma. It's called Figma Make. And then Figma has MCP, so you can hook it up to your agent and then create the code. It's pretty amazing, like how quickly you can go from like design to full implementation.
Yeah, there are so many things I could talk about now. I'm really interested in all those different topics and tools, but I don't want to drift away too much from the conversation and focus a bit more OpenTelemetry. So maybe another time we will talk about more general AI agent tools. First of all, I would be interested, how is your experience for general coding agents, like just the vanilla Cloud Code, when you use that for OpenTelemetry, for instrumentation, maybe for review, for semantic conventions, whatever? How is your experience out of the box, what those tools provide, what works well, and maybe what didn't work well for you when you used it initially?
Yeah, so for my coding task in the like OpenTelemetry operator or collector, it works pretty well because I know the project, I know the code base, so I can point it to the place I want to modify, and it will just implement very small specific functionality. In many times it can do very quickly and with very nice clean code, but it's very specific, right? So we kind of acknowledge that in that case it works well. For the other use case that I use it is for like configuring a cluster, like deploying OpenTelemetry to OpenShift. There I had less success, to be honest, because the the AI agent sometimes doesn't know which collector component to use for a given use case. And sometimes it doesn't create the valid configuration out of the box. So it will use a field that is not there, or it's deprecated, or even like on Kubernetes, there is OpenTelemetry Collector CR. We have two versions, and sometimes it will like incorrectly use one field from the other, or it will use the config that is a string object and put it into the new version that has a typed config and so on.
Yeah, and the second use case you mentioned with configuring OpenTelemetry in the cluster, was this one of the reasons why you decided to create your OpenTelemetry Collector MCP server, or what was the main motivation behind that? Maybe for everyone out there, in case we haven't mentioned it with enough detail yet. So Pavol created an OpenTelemetry Collector MCP server, who basically turns your coding agent into an OTel collector expert. And there's some really cool stuff you can do with that. We have a small demo for that later as well, where I gave it a shot and used Pavol's MCP server. But maybe first of all, for the folks out there, it might be interesting the reason why you decided to create that server.
Yeah, so yeah, exactly. Even myself, like the collector ecosystem is quite large. There is many components, and it's very hard for me to catch up with all the changes in the collector repository and understand like when I should use given component. So I was trying to solve this problem. Like, can I create a tool that will hint AI agent to create a valid configuration, and as well hint it to use the right component for a given use case?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I would like to show a small demo of your MCP server and also show the repository, so other folks can see how they can set it up in their workflow if they want to give it a shot. Maybe first of all, something in case it's not clear what an MCP server is. Maybe we should have talked about that first before talking about the why. An MCP server is basically a server which implements the Modal Context Protocol, which is an open standard, how you can connect AI applications, tools, or other systems with AI agents, so that every interaction is basically speaking the same language. And the beauty of that is, if everybody is implementing that protocol, it doesn't matter if you're using Claude Code or Anti-Gravity or another agent, everybody will be able to access your AI application. In that example here, the Auto Collector MCP server, which gives you superpowers for your collector. But really the beauty of that is you build those tools which extend certain capabilities where the agents are not that good yet, and everybody can consume and use it. So that's the beauty of it. A little bit similar like OpenTelemetry, why OpenTelemetry is so cool. And yeah, therefore I'm really happy about what Pavol already started with his collector MCP server. Because of that, I was simply able to also test it in my coding agent. And I'm gonna quickly share my screen to show you how this is looking like. Just need to rearrange my windows. 1 second. All right, and share. So you should be able to see my screen, hopefully, if the live stream is working. If not, please scream somewhere in the chat, or Erica, if you see it, maybe. But yeah, perfect. I think you're able to see it. This is the MCP server, which was created by Pavol, and I will put a link into the chat as well. So I can highly recommend you to check this one out. It's pretty awesome. And also the setup is quite easy. So you just run the HTTP server. In that case, it's running here on port 8080. And then you can add it to Claude or to any other coding agent where you want to use it. And as you can see here, there are a lot of future work items which could be added, which could be extended to. So there's a lot of potential in the OTel ecosystem about this whole thing. And yeah, definitely I can recommend checking that out. I gave it a step on my own and also added a demo to our OllyGarden greenhouse repository, the public repo where we show our demos. I'm gonna also put a link to that in the chat, where you can see what we've been doing here, or what I use the auto collector, the MCP server in context of the collector for. So as mentioned, the MCP server of Pavol is giving the collector more knowledge about how the collector works in the cluster, how the collector is configured, which components are in the collector. And one scenario in which I was running from time to time, and probably a lot of people out there as well, the collector has a very frequent release cycle. So I think every 2 weeks, there's a new version of the collector, which is a good thing because it means that the collector is being developed actively. But as a result of that, you constantly need to catch up with latest changes, with configuration changes you eventually need to do when you want to update, and simply about the latest developments in terms of the collector. And I thought, hey, it would be cool if I could somehow have a mechanism in my dependency update workflow when I update the collector to use Pavol's MCP server to tell me if I can proceed with the update of my collector, or if there's maybe a breaking change based on the configuration and components I use in my cluster. And based on that, I decided to set up a small workflow. Maybe I first of all show you how this workflow is looking like. So I kicked off a few demos. I'm not sure if it's finished yet. Otherwise, I will show one which is already finished. I think that one here. It, in that case, just simulates that I changed something. So for the sake of the demo, but here you can see like an actual configuration of one of our dev collectors at OllyGarden. We have a bunch of configuration in here, and it has an older image. So in that case, it's running on the dev cluster right now, version 1.3.1. I think the latest is 1.4.3 right now. And now I want to update that collector. So that's like the scenario of the demo, that I have an old collector in my cluster. This is the config, and now I receive a pull request which aims to update this collector, which I attempted to do here. So you can imagine that this would update the dependencies. I simply created it manually for the demo for now. What then would happen, and that's the small workflow which I built on top of the MCP server of Pavol, is that I spin up a temporary MCP server which has specialized knowledge about the auto collector, then connects to my Kubernetes cluster, filters for the OpenTelemetry operator custom resource for my collector. It identifies which version which I'm using. So it identified here, okay, right now you have version 0.1.3.1. It's running in the observability namespace, and the name of the collector is auto. So that's like the very first step, what is happening. Then it identified, based on the knowledge of the MCP server, that it can upgrade to version 1.4.3. It analyzed the configuration which it detected in the cluster and shows it to me here in the pull request, which I pretty like, because then you can immediately compare what it was found in the cluster or what the agent looked at, and possible changes. And then it basically inspects the change log and also the different fields of the schema of the different components, and tries to give a recommendation, or gives a recommendation if it's safe to proceed with the upgrade, or if any of the configured fields are eventually breaking. If I gonna go ahead and merge that because it detected that in the change log, maybe there is a field which is not easy change. In that case, I'm lucky and I could proceed with the upgrade based on the components which I use from 0.131 to 1.4.3. But of course, I think it's clear to understand why this is beneficial. This would be super useful if we think about, okay, we have like 10 different collectors right now. We need to update them. All of them are in different clusters and different versions with different components. And I want to know if I can proceed. And without the collector, without the MCP server, I often got back very, different recommendations. So sometimes it told me, okay, you should change this field, there is a breaking change, or you should not change something, but it wasn't always accurate. And what I observed with the MCP server, the results got much, much better. There are still some rough edges. So Pavol and also myself, I'm trying to contribute to Pavol's MCP server, are continuing on improving the accuracy, on improving the schema validation, for example, of the different fields. But what I saw is that the results of the validation here got much, much better with the MCP server. I will show you exactly how this is set up and how you can also set this up on your own. But maybe at this point, Pavol, is there anything you want to add or which I missed to explain?
I think to summarize, it's called sort of helps you to reduce your anxiety when you are updating the collector, right? It's I think maybe Nico dropped from the call. Yeah, maybe he dropped from the call. I pinged him. He should be back. But yeah, the MCP server helps you to confirm that the configuration is correct and you can successfully upgrade to a new version, or there is anything you should change in your configuration to use the supported configuration and supported components from OpenTelemetry. Yeah, the other use case that you can as well use the OpenTelemetry server is for kind of checking your internal documentation. If you have any documentation for OpenTelemetry, for instance, if you are an OpenTelemetry vendor like we are Red Hat, then you can use the agents to kind of review your docs and kind of compare your configuration snippets if they are still valid with the latest collector version. Hello, hi Juka.
Sorry, Pavol. I didn't want to cut you in the middle, but I saw that Nico is having some troubles rejoining. I'm trying to ping Nico as well, but let's see. But I do have a few questions as well. So I don't know if you answered this one here in the screen, but I would like to ask you, what are the other use cases that you imagine for agents as part of your proposal? I was catching up on the proposal this morning, and I saw that there are a few things, a few different directions that we could be taking the proposal in. What are your views there? Like, what are the things that we can be doing with the MCP server and the things that we should probably not be doing?
Yeah, I think in general, the AI agent can do pretty much what we do with OpenTelemetry as of now, right? So it can help with the instrumentation, so it can configure your Java SDK or Golang SDK. It can write the instrumentation, the custom instrumentation code for you. It can configure the collector. We talked about this. And then I think there is a lot of use cases around kind of looking at the data that the collector is collecting and trying to help you answer questions based on the data.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm back. I'm sorry. My connection had a timeout for a moment, and then I had some issues joining back again. Yeah, apologies for that, and thank you, Teresi, for joining in, and Pavol for continuing the session.
Yeah, we talked briefly about like what other use cases we could solve with the OpenTelemetry server, and I was saying that it can do pretty much anything that like a normal user does with OpenTelemetry. So it can help with instrumentation configuration, but as well writing custom instrumentation to collect custom data from the business logic. It should understand which attribute names it should use for given data points, if something is high cardinality or low cardinality, and how to kind of solve these issues. And then, Then
Yeah.
there is this huge area around like looking at the live data that is going through the collector and then answering the questions there, and maybe as well optimizing the pipeline, kind of like reducing, like configuring the collector to reduce duplicate data, to reduce data that don't provide any actionable items.
I think the possibilities and the capabilities of what we will see in the future for everything around OTel or in observability in general is pretty amazing, because based on my experience, AI agents are very good with data. And right now we've been viewing everything of what we've been talking about with the Collector MCP server, and the use cases we are covering right now is everything we see from a usage perspective, how you can adopt and use OpenTelemetry. But if you view it from the perspective, okay, we produce a lot of data in a standardized open format, which is pretty popular out there. The AI agents probably also know, or if not, they are very good in reading those structured data files. The capabilities which can come with that are like crazy, especially if the models get more and more powerful. You can maybe just, instead of going to a complex dashboard or instead of entering a complex query, you just say, okay, this is my collector, somehow forward the telemetry of my collector and inspect what's going on there. And then you get a recommendation of the agent about what's happening right now. And I think in terms of this whole troubleshooting and remediation and everything, which is in terms of the actual observability perspective, we are just at a starting point right now. So there are so many different ways where the AI agents could be useful. Also, what I talked about with Jurassic in another live session, the whole alerting and notification and on-call process. In a lot of cases, you get spammed with a lot of different notifications or alerts, and most of the times it might be a false positive, or it might not be accurately reflecting what actually is happening. If you think about AI agents in that context, there's also a whole new field of possibilities in terms of maybe a first immediate remediation attempt after an alert was triggered, maybe an analyze if it's an actual alert, or if we detect any issues in the cluster or in the infrastructure, and only send the alert out if we're able to confirm that. And yeah, there's just so many possibilities for that. There is an interesting question in the chat from Aditya. I hope I'm not too late to answer that, because I didn't saw it at the first moment. In a world where agents will dominate, what are the extra things that OTel or observability tools in general will have to cover? Do you want to go first, Pavol, or should I give my take on this question?
Yeah, I think as this is kind of the first step, I'm not sure if I understand the question well, is kind of make OpenTelemetry easy to be used by the AI agents, right? That's the first step that we are trying to solve with the MCP server, to kind of bridge the agent with OTel. And OTel, like the core functionality of OTel is to enable the observability, is to do the data capture in the process and collect high fidelity data that will help you to understand the system behavior. That's, I think, for me, the main use case for OTel. And then how we use this information, that's kind of outside of scope of the OpenTelemetry project. But without this data, we are not able to kind of do anything, right? Because that's really the foundation in observability.
I have a wild thought or a wild take for you, Pavol, and would love to hear your opinion, because it goes into the same direction like the questions from Aditya. Do you think we will maybe sooner or later see a CLI for interacting with OTLP data or the collector itself? Because one of the things where agents are very, very efficient and good with is CLIs, because they can, for example, run the CLI-help command, and from there they iteratively find out how you need to use the CLI. And if we would now imagine, okay, we have a CLI which allows you to operate your collectors or OpenTelemetry in general, different components of that, or maybe even your observability backend, do you think that could be a thing, or it's an idea, or but not really likely? How's your take on that?
Yeah, I haven't thought about the CLI, but I think for the configuration use case of the collector, we need to have official JSON schemas for the components. I think this is not beneficial only for the AI agent, but as well, like in general, for documentation and normal users, because right now it is difficult to configure the collector because there is no schema, and the collector components are kind of documented in the README files, but many times these README files are not complete. There is other configuration options that are only available in the Ghost source code. And sometimes the configuration is even split into multiple files, and it's just very hard to figure out what is actually available. If this is exposed as JSON schema somewhere, or it will be kind of as an output from the CLI tool, it doesn't really matter that much to me, I think.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, but the format or the interface, how you expose that information, is secondary, as long as it's a interface or a schema, like a JSON file, a CLI, YAML file, which is popular, which is widely known, and what the agents are very good with. That's also to answer the question, or coming back to the question again, I think that's something which will be very important for the future, to have this format, this way, which is easily compatible with the agents, which is a structured way of exposing information where the agents are good at navigating through the data, and based on that you will get better results. So for the future, for observability tools, for OTIF, observability backends, I think it's very important to have this structured approach, and also to think about, okay, what do we need to do in order to make users be comfortable and have a good experience using our platform, but also what do we need to do in order to give agents a good way to interact with our platform? Because soon maybe it's not the users anymore which directly integrate with the platform, but they use agents to interact with the platform. So this will be important, in my opinion, for the future.
And this was just the collector. I think what we are kind of missing in OpenTelemetry is kind of the consistency across the SDKs. Like they are, again, like released and maintained separately. So as well, like some of the configuration is different, how they are injected is different. And again, all these can change across the different releases. And for an end user that works on multiple languages, it might become very overwhelming to understand all these differences between releases. Yeah. And that's the same thing for an AI agent, right? So if we kind of reach some good consistency, how the things are configured, what kind of data they emit, like I'm still not sure if like it's probably difficult for a user to understand like which semantic conventions given version of auto instrumentation is emitted, right? This information I think is missing in the whole ecosystem. Yeah. What is great about these agentic systems, if we somehow expose this information, even though it's going to be a lot of information, then agent can still efficiently optimize it and give us good understanding of what we actually deploy in the system. Yeah. So maybe we can still have large ecosystem with a lot of moving components at a different velocity, but the agent will kind of make sense of all of this and give us good kind of summary what we need to change in our deployments.
Yeah. Okay, so we are already 4 minutes over now. If you have 5 more minutes, I would like to quickly recap what we talked about, and maybe also looking a little bit into the more closer future, what we think what's next, or where also maybe the community can help us with. Right now, we have your implementation of the OpenTelemetry Collector server. What do you see as a next improvement for the, first of all, for the Collector MCP server, and then for the whole OTIL community. I think we already touched on the proposal, which is right now open in the community, where is no full alignment yet. So the community didn't decide yet how we want to proceed with the proposal, but how do you see like the next 2 to 3 months in terms of Agentic Workflows, MCP servers in context of OTIL, and maybe also a hint or a call to action for people watching who are interested in the topic, how they can engage with that whole thing here.
Mm-hmm. So I would like to see some consensus on the proposal to kind of figure out like what is important for the community to get started with and build. And for the collector configuration, there is already ongoing work to standardize on the JSON schema for the component configuration. So that's great. Once that kind of materializes, it would be important for us to start consuming it in the MCP server. That would be kind of the next step. Or in the meantime, improve our schema generation. I think there are still things that we can make better. And then slowly, I think we can add other functionality. For instance, there is already the declarative configuration for SDK, which is easy to consume. It's a schema, so we can kind of bundle it into the MCP server or into a skill and try to experiment with use cases, how it works with the AI agent, if there is anything we should add. So for instance, the SDK, the declarative configuration is not supported across languages. I'm not sure if you right now would like to use it with AI agent, if it would hallucinate and try to use it with language that doesn't support it. So we need to look at these use cases and from the user perspective, how we would use these parts of the ecosystem and make sure that they are executed well with AI agent.
I'm really excited about whatever is happening and how or where it is happening in the next few months. But I know that the features or the possibilities which those workflows, MCP servers, or agents will give to OpenTelemetry will be very, very useful for the users, but also for actual developers of OpenTelemetry. And I really want to see more movement and more development on those topics. So maybe for everybody out there who's watching right now or who's watching the recording, if you're interested in the topic, there is right now an open proposal created by Pavol for the community, where we talk about how this whole thing could be incorporated into the project. I will send a link to it in the chat. So feel free to follow that proposal or maybe even interact with that proposal. Or if you have any other recommendations or questions in the meantime, you can also always feel free to reach out to me or maybe to Pavol via LinkedIn or via the CNCF Slack. So I'm very happy to talk about those topics. And if more people would be interested in that, that would be awesome, because there are a lot of things we can do and there's only limited time for it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's going to be a great thing, as you mentioned, because like observability is pretty hard problem, and we, with OpenTelemetry and open tracing in the past, we wanted to create a world where like observability will be built into the software packages. However, this is not happening, and it will probably never happen because people still treat observability as something like a data operation that you have to do in your environment. But with AI agents, now it will become much easier, and maybe you can deploy your AI agent that will just take care of your entire observability in your environment and instrument the code, configure the collector for you, and look for the anti-patterns, like optimize the pipeline and things like that. So I think it's exciting.
Yeah. Exciting time to be alive. All right. Thank you very much, Pavol, for joining me. I think, or at least for me, it was very interesting. I hope for the folks watching the session, it was interesting as well. Apologies from my side again for the disconnect. I'm not sure what happened and why there were some issues. It will be better the next time. And maybe, who knows, we will have a follow-up session in a few weeks to report about latest development in terms of the projects and the topic. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, then see you the next time in the next live session. Bye bye.